An inherited heart disease has confined young Alice to her bed. All the caregivers either run away or turn out to be thieves, until one day a street artist named Anna, who desperately needs money, shows up at the house. But Alice's husband, Alberto, starts noticing troubling details. "Alberto, I need a new caregiver," Alice asked her husband as gently as she could. "It's gotten worse, I can't even hold a drinking cup anymore." "Fine, I'll find someone," Alberto waved her off. "Don't you get it? Business is tough right now, I don't have time to cater to your whims. The housekeeper will bring you water." "Alberto, please." Alice burst into tears. "It's not my fault I'm sick. It's hereditary, a heart condition, you know that. And I had that dream again today, the one where I'm drowning in a wedding dress, sinking into the water with no air to breathe." "All right," Alberto softened a little. "I'll see where I can find a caregiver for you. But you know we've already hired just about everyone in this town. Even for a good salary, no one really wants the job." Her husband left the bedroom. Downstairs, a door slammed shut. Alice lay in bed, feeling another episode of rapid heartbeat shake her frail body. Over the past year, she had gone from a vibrant 35-year-old woman to an old lady. The mirror her husband had, as if to punish her, placed opposite the bed reflected white streaks at her temples and pale, parchment-like skin. She feared that mirror altogether. Alberto claimed he had bought it at a flea market. Antique, with a cracked silvering and an ornately carved frame, it looked like a doorway to the afterlife, especially during her night terrors, when a thin sliver of light melted in the glass, revealing her own pale face. Alberto refused to remove or move his gift. Alice sank back into the pillows and closed her eyes. Sunlight poured through the windows, but drawing the curtains was now a task that would take her an hour, even with a walker. She smirked bitterly. A year ago, her powerful father had passed away, having by then loosened his grip on the family business. Competitors quickly snatched up the freed pieces of the city's construction empire. But even what remained was more than enough to live well. Yet, under the weight of stress, Alice's heart condition had worsened, the same illness that had once taken her mother, Rosa. Alice barely remembered her mother, it had been so long ago. Her father had loved Rosa deeply, never remarried, and occasionally shared stories from their youth, how he and his best friend Alan had fought for the heart of the woman they both adored. In the end, Rosa chose Alice's father, Michael. She had walked down the aisle already pregnant. The rejected rival cut off all ties with his former friend. Alice only knew that Alan had stayed in their city and built a successful life for himself. Her father used to call his ex-friend a damn golden boy and a spoiled favorite of fate. Alice resembled her mother in many ways, the same flawlessly smooth dark hair, pale matte skin, and sculpted profile. The heart condition was their family's curse. Not a single woman had lived past 40, they all left too soon. After her father's death, Alice inherited his wealth, there were no other claimants. But her illness quickly drained her strength. Almost immediately, she handed the business and all responsibilities over to her husband, even giving him unrestricted access to her finances, a decision she now regretted. Still, Alice knew, money wouldn't save her. There are no pockets in a coffin. "Alberto, maybe I should go to the hospital?" Alice asked after her first episode. And what could they do? Her husband replied with a smirk. "Take your meds and stop making things up." "But surely there are new treatments by now," she sighed. "And besides, I just feel lonely in the house all the time. You're never here, and lying in this room, where I can't even get downstairs, it's just too much. Alice, the best treatment for you is peace and quiet," Alberto explained. "So stop being difficult." He kept hiring caregivers for her, always random women. Some Alice couldn't tolerate, while others ran off, taking her wallet or phone with them. Over time, she realized she had no choice but to lie there quietly and wait for death. Technically, Alberto took care of her just enough to maintain appearances, but in reality, he was simply waiting for her to pass away. Alberto understood nothing about business. The company was actually still run, as it had been for years, by Ryan Long, her father's trusted manager. It was Ryan who transferred all business profits to a special account, one that originally belonged to Alice but was now under her husband's control. And that arrangement suited Alberto perfectly. A handsome young man, he had only one true asset, his looks, and he had played them to his advantage, winning over the wealthy but inexperienced Alice. Under her father's strict control, Alice had remained a virgin until 27. Naturally, Alberto didn't impress Michael, but it was time for Alice to get married, and there were no other suitors eager to offer her their hand and heart. "Just so you know, I see right through you," Michael had told his new son-in-law. "You'll never get near the business. But go ahead, live like a spoiled house cat with my daughter if that's what you want." "I want to start my own business," Alberto declared boldly. "Would you sponsor me?" "Yeah, right." Michael burst into laughter. "You're a perfumed peacock who spends 2 hours in the bathroom every day. What business, Alberto? Be grateful you were even allowed into a respectable family and my house." "Oh, sure, thanks a lot." Alberto snapped. "You underestimate me. I could inherit your company one day as a successor. Or do you plan to live forever? Don't even dream about my company." Michael smirked. "Alice will inherit it, and you'll get nothing but pocket change." When Alice fell bedridden after her father's death, Alberto saw it as the perfect opportunity to become rich. He tricked his wife into signing a few documents, which he could use at any moment to take everything for himself, but he wasn't in a rush. Rumors said that Michael had been shrewd enough to put a clause in place: any business decisions made by his daughter would be void unless approved by the manager within a set period. Alberto didn't know the exact length of this moratorium, and he couldn't ask without revealing his intentions, so he waited. In the meantime, he spent his nights away from home with his mistress, his former classmate Mary. And today, once again, she was already waiting for him at the doorstep of their rented cottage. "Are you staying long?" "I've missed you," the young woman pressed against Alberto. "Are we going to the sea soon?" "Well, when she dies, we'll mourn, I'll inherit, and then we can go to the sea," Alberto smiled. "But for now, we'll wait." "That's such a long time to wait." Mary pouted. "Let's at least go for the weekend, clear our heads. I'm tired of sitting here within 4 walls. You won't even let me invite my girlfriends over. What's the point of this house with a pool if there's no one to show it off to? Are you two in cahoots or something?" Alberto snapped, and Mary realized she had gone too far. "Alice complains she's lonely, and now you're doing the same. Why is everyone so bored, huh? You've got a pool here, loungers, a fridge full of food." "Sorry. I really missed you," she said, contrite. "Alberto, I understand. I'll wait. I'm very patient, you know that." Alberto nodded and thought about how strangely things had turned out. In their youth, Mary had been considered a rich girl in their village. Her stepfather owned a pig farm, but the business was lost due to some intrigues, and he went back to his homeland, leaving Mary's mother to deal with the debts. The beautiful stepdaughter of the businessman quickly became the center of attention for the local boys, but she unexpectedly turned her attention to Alberto, becoming his shadow. When the young man decided to move to the big city, Mary followed him. Even Alice, among the daughters of the wealthiest men in town, was chosen together with her. For some reason, Alberto wasn't jealous of the pale, sickly beauty, Mary. Back then, they were renting a tiny apartment and surviving on instant noodles. Now, Mary had her own, though rented, cottage, money, and clothes. She felt that with the arrival of wealth, Alberto had grown distant, changed, and now she wasn't sure their bond was as strong and unbreakable as it had been. Alberto stayed with his mistress until the evening, then left. Now, Mary seemed too clingy to him, and somehow, she seemed older and more tedious. He had already met a cute girl, Veronica, at the club. She was incredibly dumb, but damn, she was gorgeous. Veronica had just turned 19, and in her company, Alberto felt like the king of the world. He thought the idea of a weekend getaway to the sea wasn't bad, just not with Mary. But first, he needed to figure out the caregiver situation for his wife. As he wandered through the park thinking about this, he noticed a young girl in dirty jeans and a cheap t-shirt offering to draw portraits for anyone interested. She looked thin and hungry. "Hey, you! Come here," she waved. "I've got work with accommodation. Anything's better than standing out here, getting soaked in the rain or baked in the sun." "You want to make me a slave or something?" the girl asked boldly. "No, nothing like that." Alberto laughed. "It's simpler than that. I've got a very sick and demanding wife, and caregivers don't stick around. But you seem good with people. Take the job, and I'll pay well. I won't take your passport, and you'll have decent living conditions. The house has a separate apartment for the staff." "What's wrong with your wife?" the girl asked. "By the way, I'm Anna." "And you are?" Alberto, the employer, introduced himself. "My wife has heart problems, it's hereditary. She can hardly get out of bed now, so I'll pay you monthly. We don't know how much longer she'll last, she could die any day. If you're not afraid of all that, I'll pay generously." "Well, I'll give it a try," Anna nodded. "Just know this, I don't have a medical education. If you need someone to give injections or set up drips, you'll have to find someone else. But I can keep company, feed her, help her change clothes, and I can bathe her. I worked in a homeless shelter and volunteered in a hospice for an entire summer when my mother passed away." "All right then. Pack your things, let's go," Alberto suggested. "I'll introduce you to your charge, and I'll pay you right away because I need to leave for a trip soon, literally in a few days." Anna started packing her sketches and easel, threw a dirty backpack over her shoulder, and returned. She didn't have any other belongings, but Alberto didn't care. The thought of spending time with his young lover by the sea clouded his mind. Right now, he would hire anyone as a caregiver, and frankly, how Alice would react didn't bother him much. After arriving at the house, he briefly introduced his wife and the new caregiver to each other. Then, in the maid's quarters, where there really was a separate apartment with its own entrance, he handed over money for the household, packed his suitcase, and left. Alice was too weak to protest, even though she didn't trust the new caregiver. Anna, however, got to work immediately. She took a shower, changed into a casual t-shirt and sweatpants, and then helped Alice bathe, changed her clothes, combed and dried her hair with a blow dryer. She remade the bed and prepared a light dinner. For the first time in a long while, Alice lay there, feeling like a normal person. "Sonora, have you worked as a caregiver before?" she asked. "Strangely, I don't feel awkward, even though you gave me a bath." "Oh, no formalities, we're almost the same age," Anna suggested. "Otherwise, I'll feel like an old lady." "All right." Alice laughed but winced from the pain. "So, have you worked as a caregiver?" "In a hospice, when my mother passed away." "She had cancer," Anna said quietly. "It was 2 years ago, but it wasn't a long time." "And how did you end up on the streets?" Alice asked. "Your husband said you were an artist?" "Yes, I graduated from art school, then worked as a set designer in the theater," Anna nodded. "I had a falling out with my father and left home." "Listen, could I draw you tomorrow?" she asked. "If you can't pose yourself, I could work from a portrait, from this one. You look so retro, somehow. Your face is really memorable, unusual." "That's my mom, not me." Alice weakly smiled. "I had forgotten how much we look alike. She passed away too, like your mother, just a long time ago." "Well, fine, draw whoever you want. I don't have many entertainments right now. By the way, did your husband leave?" "Yes, packed his suitcase and left." Anna nodded. "Is it always like this?" "All the time." Alice sighed. "What can I do?" She closed her eyes and dozed off. After the hot dinner, she felt very sleepy. Surprisingly, the knowledge that there was someone else in the house was calming. Anna, comfortably settled on the orthopedic mattress, smirked. If only her father could see her now. However, he probably didn't care. Her father hadn't loved her mother, as she was reminded every time they fought, and he was always reproached with some Rosa. Anna only knew that Rosa had chosen someone else, and her father, out of despair, had married the first woman he came across. That turned out to be Mildred, her mother. Still, they lived quite well. Her father had built his own small business. Anna suspected that he worked so hard to spite someone, he tried too much. But he never had any high hopes for her. Her mother enrolled her in art school, and she went to university on her own. There, she made new friends. One of those friends, Tammy, now worked in her father's house, but not as an artist, she was the housekeeper. On the streets, Anna also found herself quite consciously. After her mother's death, she was gripped by an inexplicable sadness. Any activity seemed meaningless, and having money on her card didn't bring her any joy. Anna tried to volunteer, participated in charity projects, but soon became disillusioned with it all. One day, she packed her backpack and left home. She initially rented a bed in a hostel for a day or two, and sometimes even slept outdoors. The money from her father, who regularly topped up her card, Anna tried not to touch. It wasn't until she became seriously ill that she dipped into her savings to rent a decent short-term apartment and buy medicine. After recovering, she returned to the streets. Her father was a good man, but they just couldn't get along. They were both stubborn and willful. Anna vividly remembered their last conversation. "You're 26, Anna. Isn't it time for you to get married?" Alan yelled at his daughter. "I even have a suitor in mind, a respectable man." "Dad, how old is he? 70? 40? Anna innocently asked. "Are you trying to pull off some merger of assets at my expense?" "No, it's not going to happen." "What does that have to do with capital?" Alan snapped at his daughter. "Anna, you're chatting with all sorts of riffraff, standing in picket lines with signs, engaging in nonsense. You could have a job by now, even start your own design studio. Then help whoever you want, orphan children, whales, whoever. You know, my riffraff is a lot better than the crowd of hypocrites you're used to hanging around with." Anna was outraged. "Your fake smiles and pretended bowing with your partners are worth nothing. I just don't want to become the same thing." "But they're just milking you." Alan almost cried. "Your mom wouldn't be happy about this. Don't you dare talk about her." Anna shouted at her father. "You never even loved her, and now you're pretending to be this poor, grieving widower. That's true hypocrisy." Anna, lost in her memories, closed her eyes and unexpectedly fell asleep. She awoke in the middle of the night to a loud, desperate scream. She jumped up and, still in her t-shirt, rushed into Alice's room. Alice was sitting on the bed, pale as a ghost, her hair tangled. The woman was gasping in fear. Anna switched on the nightlight and looked at her charge. Alice was terrified, stretching her hands toward the mirror. "This can't go on." Alice whispered hoarsely. "I keep having nightmares. I'm running through a forest in my wedding dress, and then I drown in a swamp, and the pristine white dress turns into filthy, muddy rags, and then I wake up, and there's this mirror, like a tunnel." "Well, of course," Anna replied with a smirk. "Your room looks like a crypt." "Let's do this," Anna continued. "We'll move to my servants' quarters. There's a second room there, and one bathroom will be enough for us. The windows open to the garden, and you don't even have a small window here. But we have to go downstairs." Alice sighed. "I haven't been down for 6 months. Look at you, sitting here like a princess in a tower." Anna laughed. "Come on, let's get moving. Don't look at me being so thin, I can still carry you down." They moved everything downstairs until early morning. Anna carried Alice's things, bedding, the commode, then settled her in the adjacent room. They opened the garden-facing windows and breathed in the fresh, damp night air. Alice's breathing steadied, and she looked almost happy. I won't let myself be dragged upstairs again, to the second floor, Alice said firmly to Anna. I'll try to move more on my own now. Even if it's with a walker or a cane, whatever it takes. Good for you. Anna nodded approvingly. I won't leave you. Don't worry. Now that I've started, I'll finish it properly. Thank you. Alice smiled warmly. I'm really grateful to you. That same evening, Alberto was far from bored. His car sped toward the airport with his young lover. Tickets were booked, the hotel was arranged, and he had even decided to take a week-long vacation. Veronica looked overjoyed at the news. Darling, she exclaimed, throwing her arms around Alberto when she heard about the trip. You're so thoughtful. And generous. Alberto smirked in response. So get ready. On the way, we'll stop at the store to pick up some beachwear, then head straight to the airport. Oh, I think I've found myself a real magician. Veronica gasped, staring at Alberto's self-satisfied face. Alberto, looking at the girl, thought that for her, a child from a poor family, a vacation at a resort would truly be a huge event. As for him, having gained access to his wife's money, he had quickly become accustomed to luxury and could no longer imagine his life without it. Alberto didn't even notice that he had already squandered most of the money from the accounts. Meanwhile, Alice was gradually getting used to not being stuck in the stuffy, locked room on the second floor. She and Anna had breakfast on the terrace, dined in the dining room, and in general, the young wife was literally bouncing with happiness. She hadn't had nightmares for the third night in a row. Anna entertained her by chatting, helping her dress and shower, and cooking and feeding her. Alice even offered Anna some clothes from her wardrobe, so she wouldn't have to wear her old rags. But one day, their relationship was put to a serious test. Alice sent Anna to buy groceries, and Anna came back a couple of hours later with bags from the most expensive supermarket in town. Alice, seeing the receipt, froze in shock. The amount was more than her sitter made in a week. She angrily asked, "What, are you an undercover millionaire, Anna? What's with these outrageous expenses? Or did you steal food from some rich person?" "Oh, of course. And then I outran the cops in a taxi," Anna replied, rolling her eyes. "I bought it myself, calm down. But my money would have been more than enough for this." Alice continued, still upset. "Listen, I really want an explanation. And you paid with a card too. Maybe you're a scammer who stole it and now spending stolen money in the stores." "Oh, stop fantasizing," Anna said. "You're never going to figure it out. It's my card, and my money. You're judging a book by its cover. Just because I was homeless, you think I'm poor. But actually, my father is a very wealthy man, just complicated, and the card is unlimited. I just don't use it much. And today, it's okay to splurge. It's my birthday." "Wait, seriously?" Alice gasped. "Wow, congratulations. Okay, I need to think of a gift." "You don't need to get me anything." Anna waved her hand. "It's enough that we just sit together for dinner." "Then why don't you live off your father's money?" Alice asked. "Since it's there and the card's not blocked. I didn't leave to keep my old lifestyle." Anna smirked. "I left to see if my father really loves me or not. And also to see how long his patience would last." "Well, looks like your dad turned out to be patient." Alice smiled. "And does your husband know that you're actually rich?" "No, of course not. Why would he?" Anna shook her head. "And you wouldn't know either." My little slip-up." "Well, no matter what, I'm happy for you." Alice sighed. "My life already has enough mysteries. Your presence has really brightened it up. I don't want to part ways just because someone else stole something again. The last sitter, for example, cleaned out my jewelry box. But luckily, all the important pieces are safely kept in the safe." "Oh, come on. Too much bad luck for just you." Anna huffed. "By the way, what are you doing lying here, passively waiting for death? Where are the doctors, the tests?" Why did your husband set everything up so that his wife is locked away in solitude, without help or support? Ah, you wouldn't believe it. I'm asking myself the same question now, sighed Alice, but I'm afraid I've given him too much power. It's cost me any chance at business or anything else. All that's left is this house and probably debts. The recent bank statement confirmed it. You'll laugh, but I can't even afford a private clinic now. And as for that, I could barely afford your services for a couple of months. Don't worry, I'm not here for the money, Anna smiled. Consider me your personal guardian angel. And honestly, I could draw you for hours. I've already thought of a whole series of works. It'll be enough for an exhibition if I push myself. As for your husband, kick him to the curb. Your Alberto is a shady character. Easier said than done, sighed Alice. Now, he's the one in charge of the house. All right, but what if I arrange for you to get checked out at the hospital? No charge, I just want to understand what kind of illness you have. Maybe it's treatable. You know, my friend Deborah has a brother, a really talented cardiothoracic surgeon, Jeffrey. He works at our new hospital. I could try to arrange something with him. Alice just nodded in response. The news had exhausted her, so Anna helped her get to bed and started preparing a festive dinner. She also texted her childhood friend, asking her to arrange a consultation with her brother. Soon, Deborah replied, saying that Jeffrey had agreed and a date was set for the checkup. Anna didn't go into detail, speaking vaguely, and Deborah, not the brightest, assumed that Anna was asking for herself. A week later, when Alberto came back home, he immediately realized how foolish he had been. Alice was walking around the house with a walker. She looked vibrant, even with a blush on her cheeks. She had firmly refused to move back to the second floor. Alberto tried to convince her, then threatened, but she just laughed. Alberto, why are you so nervous? She smiled. This is the most reasonable solution. What do I need a sitter for if I can't call her at night? You're never around. You need to sleep at night, her husband scolded. You forgot about my nightmares? Alice snapped. Of course, why remember them? It's just something that happens to your wife. Stop it. Alberto got angry. I'm always concerned about what happens to you. Yeah, exactly why you're never around. Alice snapped back. Go on, don't ruin my mood. Her husband left, once again pretending to be offended. Alice then thought about the mistake she had made marrying him. This man was only interested in money. With a sigh, she opened her laptop to check her bank account and was horrified to see the expenses for the trip for two to the sea. Her husband was now spending her fortune without any shame. Meanwhile, Anna was laying the groundwork to transfer Alice to the clinic for an examination. She described Alice's condition to Jeffrey in messages, and he said that the situation seemed critical and needed to be addressed immediately. Following the young doctor's instructions, the clinic began preparing a room. Jeffrey's sister, who happened to run into Anna's father, accidentally mentioned she had spoken to Anna's friend. Alan, who hadn't heard from his daughter, even on her birthday, immediately became suspicious. And what did Anna want? Alan asked, curious. Was she asking about me? No, but she urgently needed a consultation with Jeffrey. Do you remember my brother? He's a cardiac surgeon, works at the new hospital, they just built it recently. A cardio center, actually. And Jeffrey is one of their top doctors. Deborah explained. But I still don't understand what's going on with Anna. Well, why would my daughter need a cardiac surgeon? Alan was horrified. Has the lifestyle she's been leading affected her health? Just recently, there were prescriptions from the pharmacy. Deborah, thanks for sharing. He said goodbye, leaving her puzzled. Deborah still couldn't understand what he was talking about or why Alan suddenly rushed home. The businessman was genuinely worried. He was sure his daughter was seriously ill and in need of his help. The hastily gathered information only confirmed his fears. Alan's contacts at the hospital told him that Jeffrey had ordered a private room to be prepared for a seriously ill patient, and then Anna had used her card to pay for the clinic's services. In a panic, the businessman called his head of security. Richard set up surveillance on Anna immediately. But where am I supposed to find her? She left the park after drawing, Richard replied. I don't care. Alan barked at him. There's information that Anna is seriously ill. What nonsense is this? The head of security waved him off. Fine, if it'll make you feel better, we'll keep an eye on her, find out what's going on. Exactly, Alan demanded. I want a full report on my desk tomorrow. And don't even think, Richard, that you can slack off. You're risking your head, not just your job. I always do everything properly, Richard smirked. You're taking it pretty seriously today, Alan. Now I'm getting scared. He left, and the businessman tried to get some work done. But nothing was working. He was too worried about his daughter. He paced back and forth all day, like a caged animal. Only when he received an update from the head of security did he feel a little calmer. Now Alan knew that his wayward daughter hadn't gotten into trouble on her own. She had been trying to help the woman she worked for. The woman's last name sounded familiar. But for now, Alan was just relieved that Anna was okay. Despite their prideful natures, he missed her. He hadn't even blocked her card, hoping that one day Anna would come to her senses and return to him. Wiping away tears, he drove to Alice's house. Alan suddenly realized that he needed to talk to his daughter immediately. He rang the doorbell. Alberto opened the door. Recognizing one of the city's most famous businessmen, he asked in surprise, "Did you come to discuss business with me?" "Straight from the road." "I'm here to see my daughter," Alan demanded. "Anna, we need to talk." "Dad?" Anna appeared from her room in astonishment. "No way. So I wasn't imagining things when I saw Richard near the house yesterday?" "You messed up again," Alan shook his head. "It's definitely time to replace the head of security." "Oh, come on, Dad, he just had triplets recently," Anna smiled. "Lay off him. He and Francis barely get any sleep. You should give him some time off and pay for a nanny." "Oh, you're such a kind soul." Alan hugged Anna. "All right, let's go talk. I promise I won't nag too much." They walked outside and strolled around the house for about an hour. Anna explained that she couldn't just leave Alice and come back to him right now. She didn't go into details, and Alan didn't press. He was simply happy to be talking to her again. For the past few years, their interactions had mostly been him lecturing her. After their walk, the businessman left, and Anna returned home. Alice slept through Alan's visit. She was feeling worse again. For the second day, Anna had to feed her with a spoon. Alice didn't have the strength to even sit up in bed. Anna was afraid that at this rate, they wouldn't make it to the hospital in time. To make matters worse, once Alberto found out who Anna's father was, he immediately started sucking up to her. Well. Is this a story about a princess and a pauper?" he asked. "Are you really the daughter of Alan Romero?" "Oh, you talk like he's God," Anna smirked. "Yes, my last name is Romero. You saw it in the passport yourself." "But I didn't think you were related," Alberto sighed. "You have more money than Alice and I combined. What's the point of working as a nurse for pennies and dealing with someone else's dirty laundry? Does the word mercy mean anything to you?" Anna asked, disgusted. "Ah, so you're a philanthropist, huh?" Alberto laughed. "Well, life's certainly interesting." "Well, if you want to play the good-hearted saint, go ahead. I don't mind." "Yeah, that's surprising." Anna smirked. "I thought you'd be tearing your hair out to keep me from staying here." "No, why would I?" Alberto grinned. "You've got to be friendly with people like your father." He stormed out of the house, slammed the door behind him, got into his car, and drove to Mary's place. He needed to release some of his built-up tension. However, his mistress wasn't much help this time. Instead of relaxation, Alberto got an earful of complaints because Mary had been alone all these days. She was running out of money, and the lease on the house was about to expire. "You know, if things are that bad, I'm not holding you here," Alberto shouted. "Go back to your mom's place in our lovely little village. Sit there and stop showing off." "So that's how you're talking now?" The young woman was surprised. "So, as long as I was useful, you kept me around. But now what, Alberto? Have you found someone younger, prettier?" "Even if I did, what's it to you?" her lover asked. "Another girl would be grateful, but you're throwing a tantrum like my wife." "So how should I react, I wonder?" Mary asked him. "If my man suddenly disappears for over a week and then throws me out of the house?" "Oh, come on, don't get worked up," Alberto said peaceably. "There's another issue we need to address urgently. The caregiver I hired for my wife turned out to be a big surprise. She's the daughter of Alan Romero, the guy who owns half the city." "Did you look into it? Why would some rich girl suddenly try to get close to you or your wife?" Mary asked, intrigued by his story. "I think she's just bored. Rich girl entertainment, I guess," Alberto replied irritably. "You know, I probably need to find out more about this Anna." "Finally, you're using your brain," she laughed. "I thought you wouldn't figure it out. And I also advise you to get her out of your house as soon as possible. Have a fight with your wife or come up with something. I think this girl will bring us trouble." Alberto nodded in agreement. He already sensed that someone like Anna could seriously ruin their lives. He even regretted being rude to Mary, as she genuinely cared about the success of their joint endeavor. He silently hugged his faithful companion. That evening, Alberto didn't return home. He decided to spend some time and energy repairing his relationship with his mistress. Mary immediately melted. She had never been able to resist the charm of her lover for long. The next morning, according to their plan, Alberto went to meet Alan. He wanted the father to influence his daughter and make her leave their home with Alice. They had concocted and even rehearsed a pretty believable story. When Alan found out that the issue was about Anna, he agreed to meet Alberto, but he clearly looked down on him, not considering him his equal. "What is it that you want?" the elderly businessman asked his visitor. "I'm here to warn you." Alberto immediately took the bull by the horns. "Anna is mistaken about my wife. She trusts her unconditionally. But your daughter could be in danger. You see, my wife doesn't have a heart condition. She has a serious personality disorder on the edge of madness. She has terrifying dreams and all kinds of other issues. That's why we've gone through so many caregivers." "Yes, I've looked into it. You've changed caregivers multiple times," Alan nodded. "So what do you want from me now?" "Take your daughter away. Save her before it's too late," Alberto said sadly. "Alice is a master manipulator and pretender. She knows how to be charming. But it's just a mask. She's dangerous, especially to those who are close to her. I'm hardly ever at home because of this, but I'm afraid to leave her completely. It's all my father-in-law's fault. He spoiled his daughter, never took her to doctors. You have to understand, the troubling symptoms were there long ago." "So your wife doesn't have hereditary heart problems? Is she lying to everyone?" Alan asked, astonished. "Well, the level of deception is just impressive." "Yes, Alice could have been a great actress," Alberto nodded. "Unfortunately, her father hid the fact of her illness from everyone. I didn't even know, but after my father-in-law passed away, she really deteriorated. All the symptoms of her illness have worsened." "I see," the elderly businessman said thoughtfully. "Well, let's go. I'll take Anna from your house right now." He stood up decisively and headed for the door, instructing his secretary to cancel all meetings for the day. He then took his security team, placed Alberto in his car, and they drove off. At Alice's house, the ambulance for bedridden patients was already there, preparing for transport. Alice's condition had worsened. Jeffrey had ordered that she be taken straight to him. Anna was already packing her bag, planning to stay by her side at the hospital. But just then, her father stormed into the house, followed by Alberto. Alice's husband immediately shouted, "What's going on? I didn't give consent for hospitalization." "And that's not necessary," the paramedic sighed. "The important thing is that the patient agrees. She's still capable of making decisions." "Well, shall we go?" "Yes, take her straight to cardiology. Jeffrey is waiting." "I'll follow," Anna explained. "You will stop this nonsense immediately. That woman is a liar. She's dangerous." Alan snapped at his daughter. "Listen to what her husband is saying." "And listen to what he told me the day we met," Anna smirked, hearing Alberto's new version of Alice's illness. "I've gotten used to recording all conversations on my voice recorder, and this one was especially strange. Would you offer to make some random street beggar your wife's caregiver?" "Of course not," Alan admitted, acknowledging his daughter's point. "And yes, he talks about a heart condition but says nothing about insanity. And Dad, I'm still capable of making sound judgments. This woman is very sick, weak, and needs help, but her husband doesn't seem to be rushing to get her treatment. Want to be sure I'm right? Let's go to the hospital together. Jeffrey, the doctor, will explain everything in detail." Alberto, hearing this, went pale, and Alan gave him a withering look before grabbing Anna's bag and backpack, then heading for the door. Anna grabbed her easel and tube of drawings and followed her father. They arrived at the private clinic about half an hour after the ambulance. Alice was already lying in the operating room, hooked up to various machines. On the way, she had suffered a cardiac arrest. They managed to restart her heart, but now every second counted. Jeffrey was preparing for surgery, and they were only able to speak with him a few hours later. "We've implanted the pacemaker and did what we could," the doctor sighed. "Theoretically, her young, strong body should withstand it. But how did she let the illness get this far? To such a critical stage?" "She was deprived of treatment, locked away without help," Anna replied quietly. "See, Dad? And you still blamed me for being too trusting, while you fell for the tales of some heartless man who almost consciously let his wife die for inheritance." "I've understood now," Alan said, covering his face with his hands. "When it comes to your child, you lose all ability to think critically. I was scared for you. That's why I believed Alberto." "Jeffrey, will she be okay?" Anna asked, tears falling onto the hospital floor. "We will do everything we can," the young doctor sighed. "But keep in mind, she must avoid stress right now. Is it possible to have my security posted outside her room?" Alan asked. "To shield our girl from those stresses." "Yes, of course. She's a paying patient." "You can speak with the chief physician," Jeffrey suggested. "However, right now the patient is in the ICU, and she'll stay there for a while. No one has access to this room anyway." "That's good," Anna nodded. "We don't need any unnecessary risks." Alan left to make the arrangements, and Anna took out her sketches from the tube. They were rough drafts of Alice's portrait. Right now, all she wanted was for her new friend to be alive and well. When her father returned, he became interested in her work. He picked up the sketches and then gasped. "Rosa! This is her. Where did you get her portrait?" "Dad, what's wrong with you?" "This is Alice. She said she looks like her mother." "Maybe you're mixing them up?" "I once made the same mistake when I saw a portrait," Anna laughed. "Oh right, you've never seen Alice. What a twist." Alan muttered. "What's Alice's last name?" "I don't know, I think it's Williams," Anna mumbled. "Her father's name was definitely Michael." "Michael," Alan whispered. "He wrote me a letter right before he died, and I didn't even bother reading it out of pride. It's still sitting in the secretary." "Dad, what are you talking about?" Anna asked. "You're speaking in riddles." "Nothing, sweetheart, it wouldn't hurt to figure it all out myself," her father replied. "I'll tell you later, once I figure it out." Anna was content with that promise. She took his hand and waited for her friend to recover. Alan stayed at the hospital, periodically bringing Anna coffee. His heart ached with joy that Anna wasn't showing her usual stubbornness and was actually embracing him, needing his presence. Finally, Jeffrey announced that Anna could briefly enter Alice's room. While she was inside, her father had already left, leaving security behind. Alan went to his office, furious with himself for falling for Alberto's tricks. He called Richard to his office and ordered, "Crush that slimy bastard, destroy his reputation, but make sure Alice Williams' business isn't affected. Just make his life as difficult as possible. If Alberto has debts, have all the creditors come after him immediately. And we definitely need to publicize the fact that this bastard tried to kill his wife. I'll personally take care of that with great pleasure." That same evening, Alberto went to a restaurant to sit and socialize with useful people, but the security stopped him at the entrance. The same thing happened at the next restaurant. Alberto tried to get into a billiards club he had been a member of for a year, but even there he failed. A friend who had been outside even avoided shaking his hand. "What is going on?" Alberto shouted, forgetting all about his manners. "Am I some sort of pariah or what?" "You don't shake hands with murderers," his friend smirked. "Even if the crime wasn't completed." "Who the hell did I kill?" Alberto asked, stunned. "Your wife, you almost killed her," Adam smirked. "Yeah, Alberto, you're in trouble now, and it's time to run. If Michael Williams were alive, you wouldn't even be standing here. Alan Romero is civilized, but you've really pissed him off." Alberto listened to his companion, grabbed his head in his hands, and then, as usual, jumped behind the wheel and headed to Mary to discuss the situation. Meanwhile, Alice unexpectedly woke up in the hospital and realized that she felt different. Her heart no longer seemed like it was about to leap out of her chest. She looked around and realized she was in a hospital room. Memories of being taken by ambulance flooded back, and she spotted Anna in her line of sight. "Hello, Sleeping Beauty," the girl smiled at her. "You really scared me. But now everything is fine, just don't jump up yet, you have a pacemaker. The doctor will come soon and explain everything." "Hello, I'm Jeffrey, your doctor." A smiling man's face appeared before Alice. "How are you feeling? Let's check everything now, and then the nurses will come to dress your wounds." "Is the pacemaker permanent?" Alice asked cautiously. "In your case, yes," the doctor nodded. "Don't worry, it's the most modern one. I'll explain everything. We've had patients with this who've even had babies on their own." "I remember you," Alice suddenly said. "I saw you in the operating room." "Well, for someone who almost died, you're awfully chatty," Anna laughed. "You've already gotten poor Jeffrey talking." "And what about Alberto?" Alice asked. "I remember, he was against the hospitalization." "I don't know who you're talking about, but his behavior in your case was completely unacceptable," Jeffrey said angrily. "We barely managed to restart your heart, and if you'd been at home without help, you'd have just died in a couple of days, no doubt about it." "So he really wanted me dead?" Alice sighed. "Anna, please find Ryan Long's contact in my phone. He's my father's business partner. Have him come here with a lawyer. Tell him I'm going to divorce and cancel all the powers of attorney for Alberto." "Great!" Anna cheered. "I'll do it right now." By evening, Alice's room was filled with a steady stream of visitors. Even Alan came by, oddly wiping away a few tears. He sat by the young woman's bed, holding her hand, then left. Alice and Anna couldn't make sense of his behavior. Then came the lawyers, the manager, who was also extremely worried about his friend's daughter. Ryan himself needed medical help. He looked so bad, but that didn't stop him from issuing orders and commands to his subordinates. By the evening, Alice had signed her divorce papers, and the lawyers had begun the procedure of revoking all powers of attorney for her husband. Alberto found out about this when the security arrived to throw him out of the cottage. He turned pale with rage, got into his car, and headed to the ATM, but there was no money left in his account. The card had become a useless piece of plastic. At the hospital, Alan was trying to convince Anna to go home. Alice joined in his request. With the security present, she felt completely free and calm. Plus, Anna had told her that the handsome doctor wasn't married, which made Alice finally realize it was time to send the visitors away. "Tell me, how am I supposed to flirt with him if you two are clucking like hens?" Alice asked her voluntary sitter. "Go home, get some rest, we'll see each other tomorrow." "All right, you little flirt," Anna laughed. "Watch out, he's the brother of a friend. If you do anything wrong, I'll take terrible revenge. Don't you dare upset our boy." "How old is he?" Alice asked. "At least 30? He's even 5 years older," Anna smiled. "Okay, I'm off. Your Cupid is tired and heading to sleep." She left with her father, and Alice stayed at the clinic. She did find the doctor charming. Soon the evening rounds began, and Jeffrey intentionally left Alice for last. He comfortably settled in her room and started explaining the details of life with a pacemaker. The young woman listened intently and then asked, "When can I get up? I feel like I have strength now. I'm so tired of lying down." "We'll see tomorrow, all right?" Jeffrey asked. "After all, you had a heart stoppage. I'm playing it safe, but it's better to observe you for a little while longer." "I don't remember any of it," she complained. "Is it normal that I only remember the operating room?" "It's fine. The pacemaker was implanted under local anesthesia. You could have briefly regained consciousness." They talked for a long time after that. The young man asked his patient about her life and explained why he wasn't married. He was the only man in his family and felt it was his duty to help his mother and sister, which is why he devoted most of his time to work. He didn't have the time or energy for a personal life, and office romances didn't appeal to him, as he saw them as sources of problems. Although many in the department, and even in the entire hospital, thought differently. Alice spent another week in the private ward, even though she felt very well. Every evening, Jeffrey would spend time with her, even when he wasn't on duty. Deciding to give her friend's personal life some space, Anna finally moved back home to her father's place and even started driving her favorite car again, the bright red sports car Alan had gifted her for her 25th birthday. That morning, she drove the car out of the garage as usual. She planned to visit the hospital but was intercepted by Tammy, who wanted to chat. "Oh, listen, while you were away, I borrowed Alan's keys to this car a couple of times. That thing is a beast." Tammy smiled. "Are you back for good or what?" "I think there's nowhere left for me to run," Anna smiled. "How about you? What's going on in your personal life?" "Well, I'm currently working on this rich guy." "Your car really helped with that." "Listen, can I borrow it for today?" Tammy asked. "Sure, take it," Anna nodded, tossing her the keys. Just as they were leaving the garage, the head of security, Richard, was pulling out. "Richard, I'm with you." Anna jumped into Richard's SUV. He drove her to the hospital. Anna was sitting in the ward when her phone rang. She paled and called Jeffrey over. Together with Alice, they discussed the situation, after which the doctor led Alice out of the room. An hour later, the news was everywhere. The red sports car had exploded on one of the streets in their city. The car had first crashed into the guardrail on a bridge and then caught fire. The driver died on the spot, and the body was being taken to the morgue. That's where Alan, completely beside himself with grief, showed up. He descended into the basement with Anna, stepped inside, and then stared blankly at his daughter, who was standing there, completely unharmed. "Dad, just don't yell," Anna asked. This was Richard's idea, to catch the person who tampered with the car. "Alive." Alan collapsed onto his daughter. "I almost ended up on that table in the morgue myself from the news." "But who died in your car then?" "Tammy. She wanted to impress a guy, so I gave her the car," Anna explained. "Then Richard called me, and we decided to keep the results of the identification under wraps until the last minute." "So that's how it was?" "Tammy," Alan sighed. "Such a shame about the girl." She always tried to impress people. And who do you think is to blame? Not us. Alice, Anna sighed. She says Alberto's first education was from college, he's an auto mechanic, and Richard said the cameras in the neighborhood caught Alice's husband near our house, and by the hospital parking lot too. There's a chance I've been driving the damaged car for the past couple of days. The brakes definitely failed a couple of times, I noticed that. But I made it through, and I just didn't have the time to take it to the service. All right, no more cars for you. Ride with the driver. Alan finally tried to raise his voice at his daughter, but quickly cooled down. It seemed strange to be shouting in a morgue. We'll find Alberto. I don't know, maybe lure him in with something, promise him money. Richard indeed put out a reward for anyone who could provide information about the accident. Among those looking for her was also Alberto. However, he first sent Mara to check, and only after confirming that there were no traps did he show up in person. That's when the unlucky businessman was caught, and at the police station, he confessed to attempting to kill Anna. Alberto was even upset that his attempt failed. Alice was finally discharged from the hospital. Anna and her father convinced her to stay at their house for a while, and the three of them went to collect Alice's belongings from the house where she had lived with her husband. Alan asked to see a portrait of Rosa, Alice's mother, and that's when it hit her. You're the same friend Alan, the one my father competed with, aren't you? Alice asked, surprised. It's amazing. Under different circumstances, we might have even been sisters, with Anna. You are, Alan answered quietly. After your father's death, I received a letter. I didn't read it until I saw how strikingly similar you are to Rosa. I'll show you the letter later. In it, Michael writes that he married Rosa when she was already pregnant with you, and that your father was actually me. Michael couldn't have children due to some health issues. Wait, you're saying I'm your daughter? Alice grabbed her chest, shocked. Shoo, calm down. Anna rushed to her side. I only found out yesterday. Can you believe it? We've lived in the same city all this time, and we could have never known about this. The sisters embraced, and Alice continued packing. Alan was allowed to take the portrait of her mother with him. As for Alberto, he was condemned for the attempted murder and had to answer for the death of the innocent Anna. Alice divorced her husband and began a relationship with Jeffrey. They often joked about how convenient it was to have a heart surgeon in the house. By New Year's, Jeffrey proposed to Alice. A month later, just before their wedding, Alice discovered she was pregnant. Anna was thrilled at the prospect of becoming an aunt. She even caught the bridal bouquet. Meanwhile, Alan helped her organize her first solo art exhibition. If you enjoyed the story, please support it with a like and a comment. All the best to you.